The massive alien ship floated silently in the darkness of space, its smooth surfaces gleaming under Earth's distant sun. Inside the vessel, Ambassador Veltar's jeweled skin flickered between soft green and blue as he studied the datapad in his six-fingered hands. The readings were exactly what he expected. Another week. Plant-eating species from a water world. Perfect for the Confederation's farming colonies. Veltar's deer-like head tilted as he read through the reports. These humans seemed so fragile, living on a planet that was mostly covered in liquid water. Most civilized species found such environments disturbing. But clearly, these creatures had adapted to their odd little world. Their technology was primitive, but showed promise. Their diplomatic messages were polite and humble. Everything suggested they would fit nicely into the lower tiers of galactic society. Perhaps helping with crop production or simple manufacturing. The ambassador's translator crackled to life. "Sir, the human delegation is approaching our docking bay." "Excellent," Veltar replied, his skin shifting to a warm gold color that indicated satisfaction. "Prepare the welcome ceremony. Make sure the gravity is set to standard. We don't want to accidentally harm our new friends with anything too strenuous." Meanwhile, aboard the small human shuttle called Freedom, Captain Mike Thompson was giving his team one final briefing. The shuttle was cramped compared to the alien vessel, built for function rather than comfort. Mike stood near the pilot's seat, his uniform crisp and his expression serious. He was a career military man, but today he wasn't here as a soldier. Today he represented all of humanity's hopes for joining the galactic community. "Listen up, everyone," Mike said, his voice calm but firm. "This is bigger than any of us. Everything we do and say over the next few days will determine humanity's future among the stars." Lieutenant Jessica Martinez nodded as she unconsciously checked her weapon, then caught herself and moved her hand away. As a combat officer died hard, but the briefings had been clear. This was a peaceful diplomatic mission. The aliens they were meeting had never experienced war or violence. Their entire civilization was built on cooperation and harmony. "I still can't believe they've never had a war," muttered David Park from his position at the communications console. As a former intelligence analyst, David found it hard to imagine a species that had reached the stars without ever fighting amongst themselves. How do you solve disputes? How do you handle resources? How do you deal with criminals? Dr. Lisa Walker, the team's medical officer, looked up from her equipment check. "Maybe that's exactly why they've made it this far," she said thoughtfully. "While we were busy fighting each other, they were working together to build something amazing." Mike studied each of his team members. Jessica was tough as nails, but had a good heart. David was brilliant with languages and technology. Lisa could handle any medical emergency and had a gift for making people feel at ease. They were the best humanity had to offer, remember Mike continued. "According to the initial communications, they think we're a gentle agricultural species. They've seen our cities and our farms, but they don't really understand human history or human nature. Let's not give them any reason to worry." The shuttle docked with a soft thump, and the airlock systems began their cycling process. Through the small porthole, they could see movement on the other side, tall, elegant figures preparing to welcome them. "Artificial gravity feels normal," Jessica observed as they waited. "That's considerate of them." What none of the humans realized was that the normal gravity the aliens had set was actually lower than Earth's standard. To the aliens, it was a generous accommodation for these presumably delicate waterworld dwellers. To the humans, it felt like they were walking on the moon. The airlock opened with a hiss of equalizing atmosphere, and the humans got their first look at their hosts. The aliens were beautiful in an otherworldly way, tall and graceful, with skin that sparkled like living jewels and moved with the fluid elegance of dancers. Their ship was just as impressive, with walls that curved like the inside of a seashell and lighting that seemed to come from the surfaces themselves rather than any visible source. "Welcome, children of Earth," Ambassador Veltar said through a small device that translated his melodic language into English. "Your peaceful world and gentle nature make you perfect candidates for our alliance of harmonious species." The words hung in the air as Mike and his team took in their surroundings. Everything about the alien ship spoke of a civilization that had never known violence, never needed weapons, never experienced the harsh realities that had shaped human development.
Ow.
The corridors were wide and open. There were no security checkpoints, no defensive positions, no reinforced bulkheads. Mike felt a small knot form in his stomach as he realized just how different humans were from these beings. But he smiled and extended his hand in the traditional human greeting. "Thank you for this opportunity, Ambassador. We're honored to be here." Tomorrow the real cultural exchange would begin, and both species would start learning things about each other that would change everything. The dinner hall was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. Living walls pulsed with soft blue and purple light, while ceiling vines hung down like natural chandeliers. The air smelled sweet, almost like a flower garden, and gentle music seemed to come from the plants themselves. It was beautiful, peaceful, and completely alien. Ambassador Veltar gestured proudly at the long table, covered with strange dishes. His jeweled skin glowed with warm colors as he explained each item. "This feast represents the finest cuisine from 12 different worlds," he announced. "We have prepared our most exotic delicacies for your enjoyment." Mike looked at the spread. Before them, everything was soft, colorful, and seemed to glow faintly. There were bowls of what looked like pudding in various shades of green and blue, plates of fermented leaves that smelled like vinegar, and something that resembled glowing moss arranged in neat little piles. "Please, try everything," urged Veltar, his skin shifting to an excited orange. "This bowl contains seeds from the volcanic plains of Zephyr Prime. The locals call it fire food because it has thermal properties." David carefully took a small spoonful. Seeds looked dangerous enough. They had a slight green glow and tiny wisps of what might have been steam rising from them. He placed them on his tongue, waited for the burn, and then had to fight back. Laughter. It was barely warm with all the heat of room temperature water. "Wow," David said. "On Earth, we have foods with much more heat. Ghost peppers can reach over 1 million heat units. Carolina Reapers are even hotter, some people. Enjoy the challenge." The aliens around the table gasped in horror. Veltar's skin flickered rapidly between yellow and white. "Over 1 million heat units? Surely you mean thermal units for cooking, not consumption." "No, we eat them," Lisa explained gently. "Some humans really enjoy extremely spicy food. Hot sauce, chili peppers, spicy noodles. There are restaurants that make you sign papers before they'll serve you their hottest dishes." "Sign papers?" squeaked a small blue alien from across the table. "Like legal documents?" "For food, just waivers," Mike said with a smile. In case someone can't handle the heat. The aliens exchanged worried glances. Veltar's translator worked overtime as whispered. Conversations broke out in a dozen different languages. Finally, the ambassador composed himself, his skin settling into an amused yellow pattern. "How wonderfully primitive," he said, with what humans would recognize as condescending kindness. "Your species still enjoys the thrill of consuming heated vegetation, like children playing with their food." Jessica bit her tongue to keep from commenting. She'd grown up in Texas, where people put hot sauce on their hot sauce. The conversation moved on to recreation and sports. The aliens became animated as they described their most thrilling activities. A tall crystalline being named Rixala, who seemed to be some sort of security officer, leaned forward with excitement. "You must hear about our most extreme sport," Rixala said, his crystal body ringing like wind chimes. "Acceleration diving. Participants subject themselves to 0.8 gravity while performing aerial maneuvers. Only our most daring athletes attempt such dangerous conditions." The humans exchanged glances. Earth's gravity was 1.0, meaning this extreme. Alien sport was actually lighter than their normal daily experience. "That does sound intense," Mike said diplomatically. "Oh, it is," Rixola continued. "Last year, we had 3 participants require medical attention for gravity sickness. The sport may soon be banned as too dangerous." "Sounds relaxing," Jessica whispered to David, who had to cough to cover his snort of laughter. Dr. Walker tried to shift the conversation to safer ground. "What about companion animals? Do your species keep pets? This question sparked immediate interest. The aliens loved talking about their relationships with other creatures. They described tiny, flower-like beings that sang to them, gentle floating creatures that glowed in patterns, and small herbivores that helped tend their gardens. How wonderful that you formed such bonds, Lisa said. Humans have companion animals too. Dogs, cats, birds. They live in our homes and become part of our families. The aliens were delighted. Their skin colors shifted to warm, happy hues, as they imagined these gentle humans befriending the innocent creatures of their world. Dogs are especially popular, Mike added. They're loyal, protective, great with children. They've been humanity's companions for thousands of years. What Mike didn't explain was that dogs were domesticated wolves, apex predators that humans had selectively bred for size, strength, and aggression, then trained to be loyal guardians. He didn't mention that some dog breeds were originally designed for war, others for hunting large game, and still others for fighting. And cats, Lisa continued innocently. They're independent but affectionate, great hunters. She didn't elaborate that cats were such efficient killers that they posed a genuine threat to wildlife populations, or that the average house cat retained most of the predatory instincts of its larger, wilder cousins. Such gentle spirits you must be, Veltar concluded, his skin glowing with warm appreciation. To befriend the creatures of your world so completely, this confirms everything we believed about your peaceful nature. David nearly choked on his fermented leaf salad. If only they knew that humans had also domesticated horses for warfare, trained hawks for hunting, and bred countless species for various forms of labor and protection. But the aliens seemed so happy with their assumptions. They chattered excitedly about introducing humans to their own companion creatures, about sharing agricultural techniques, about finding humans nice, quiet farming worlds where they could tend gardens and raise their gentle animals in peace. As the dinner continued, the humans realized they were walking a careful line. Every innocent comment seemed to reinforce the aliens' belief that humanity was a soft, primitive species that would fit perfectly into the lower levels of galactic civilization. The truth about human history, human capabilities, and human nature remained safely hidden beneath polite diplomatic conversation. For now, that seemed like the safest place for it. The peaceful quiet of the sleeping ship shattered like glass when the first explosion hit. Emergency lights bathed the corridors in pulsing red as warning sirens screamed through the air. The gentle, organic walls of the Harmony's edge groaned. Under the impact of weapons fire, sound the ship had never been designed to make, in the guest quarters. Mike Thompson's eyes opened before the first alarm finished its wail. 20 years of military training had burned certain responses into his nervous system. His body was already moving, rolling off the strange alien sleeping platform and reaching for his equipment bag before his conscious mind had fully processed what was happening. Jessica, David, Lisa, he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. Combat positions now? His team responded like the professionals they were. Jessica Martinez was on her feet in seconds, her hand automatically going to her sidearm before she remembered the diplomatic protocols. David Park grabbed his communication equipment while Dr. Lisa Walker secured her medical supplies. They'd trained together for years, and it showed. The ship bucked violently as something massive slammed into the hull. Through the translucent viewing ports, Mike could see them angular, brutal-looking vessels that seemed designed for one purpose only: destruction. These weren't the curved, artistic ships of the Confederation. These were weapons wrapped in metal, scarred from countless battles. Ambassador Veltar burst into their quarters, his usually colorful skin now stark white with terror. His graceful movements had become frantic, stumbling as he fought to stay. "Upright, Captain Thompson?" he gasped. "Raiders, they're using high-gravity combat tactics. Our people can't function under 1.3 gravity conditions. The crew is collapsing." As if summoned by his words, Mike felt the artificial gravity begin to increase. His feet pressed harder against the deck plating as the ship's systems strained to compensate for the raiders' tactical advantage. Around them, alien crew members began falling to their knees, overwhelmed by the crushing force. Mike barely noticed. His body automatically adjusted to the heavier gravity, muscles and bones conditioned. By a lifetime on a high-gravity world, Jessica appeared beside him, moving with the same fluid grace despite the crushing conditions that were crippling their hosts. "They'll board us," Jessica said, checking her weapon with practiced efficiency. "Count on it," Mike replied. "These aren't pirates looking for easy cargo. They're using military tactics." The sound of metal tearing echoed through the ship as grappling hooks bit deep into the hull. Cutting torches began their work, carving through barriers that had never been designed to resist assault. The Harmony's edge had been built for exploration and diplomacy, not warfare. Through the corridors, Mike could hear the sounds of panic. The alien crew was trying to respond. Their security protocols were designed for accidents and emergencies, not hostile boarding actions. Their weapons were stunning devices meant to calm agitated wildlife, not stop armed invaders. The first breach came 5 minutes later. Heavy footsteps echoed through the main corridor as the raiders poured aboard. These weren't the graceful aliens of the Confederation. They were built like tanks, heavily armored, moving with purpose, carrying weapons that could punch holes. Through starship holes, David had already positioned himself at a key corridor junction, using overturned alien furniture to create a makeshift defensive position. When the first 3 raiders rounded the corner, they expected to find terrified civilians. Instead, they found a human intelligence officer who had spent years studying close-quarters combat. The lead raider never saw David's movement one moment. The human was crouched behind cover. The next, he was inside the raider's guard, his hands moving with surgical precision. The raider's weapon went flying as David struck nerve clusters with pinpoint accuracy. The second raider tried to bring his gun to bear, but found himself suddenly lifted off his feet and used as a shield against his companion's fire. The watching alien crew couldn't even follow the movement. To their eyes, David seemed to teleport between positions, striking with impossible speed and then vanishing behind cover before return fire could find him. Meanwhile, Jessica and Lisa had become a 2-person army. They communicated through hand signals developed in Earth's military, coordinating flanking maneuvers through the ship's organic corridors. Lisa, despite being a doctor, moved like the combat medic she'd once been, providing covering fire while Jessica advanced on the raiders' positions. The raiders had expected easy prey. The ship's crew was helpless under the high gravity. Their weapons were non-lethal, and their security training focused on peaceful solutions. Instead, they found themselves facing opponents who thrived under the crushing conditions and fought with a precision that seemed supernatural. In the ship's central hub, Mike came face to face with the raid leader, a massive creature in powered armor that made him look like a walking tank. The raider's energy weapon hummed with lethal power as he raised it toward the human diplomat. Then the weapon exploded in his hands. Mike had struck the weapon's power coupling with a precision that spoke of intimate knowledge of alien technology. Before the raider could react, human hands closed around his armored throat in a chokehold that cut off blood flow to the brain without crushing the windpipe. It was a technique designed to subdue without killing. It's perfect for dealing with someone you wanted to question later. The alien crew watched in stunned silence as their gentle human guest rendered an armored warrior unconscious with his bare hands. Throughout the ship, the pattern repeated. The raiders found themselves facing an enemy that moved too fast, hit too hard, and seemed to know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. Within 20 minutes, 12 heavily armed raiders lay unconscious or restrained throughout the Harmony's edge. Not one of them was dead. As the emergency lights dimmed and normal illumination returned, the alien crew emerged from their hiding places to find the humans calmly securing their prisoners and checking on the wounded. Mike was already coordinating with Jessica to establish a secure perimeter. While David worked to restore damaged communications systems, Dr. Lisa Walker moved between the injured aliens, medical training taking over as she treated creatures whose physiology she'd learned about just days earlier. Her hands were steady, her voice calm and reassuring as she explained each procedure to her patients. Ambassador Veltar stared at the scene in shock. These 4 beings had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. They had defeated a military boarding action without killing anyone, protected a ship full of helpless aliens, and done it all while making it look almost easy. His skin flickered through colors that had no translation as one thought echoed through his mind. What are these humans? The medical bay hummed with quiet activity as Dr. Lisa Walker worked on her third patient of the hour. Her hands moved with practiced precision as she treated a crystalline alien whose arm had shattered like glass during the raider attack. Alien's wounds would have been fatal without immediate care. But Lisa worked as if she treated crystal-based life forms every day. Ambassador Veltar stood in the doorway, his skin shifting through colors that seemed to have no pattern. Purple melted into silver, then flashed to deep red before settling into a sickly yellow-green. His translator struggled to keep up with the rapid changes in his emotional state. Captain Thompson, Veltar finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. "I must ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Mike looked up from where he was helping Jessica secure the last of the captured raiders. The raider was twice Mike's size and covered in natural armor plates, but he was secured with what appeared to be standard restraint tape. "Of course, Ambassador. What's troubling you?" Veltar's legs trembled as he stepped into the medical bay. "What kind of world did you really come from?" "Not the diplomatic answer you gave us before. The truth." Mike glanced at his team. They'd known this conversation would come eventually. After what had just happened, there was no hiding what humanity really was. "Earth is challenging," Mike began, carefully. "We have weather systems that can destroy entire cities in a matter of hours. Hurricanes with winds that can lift buildings. Tornadoes that carve paths of destruction across continents. Blizzards that bury everything under meters of frozen water." Veltar's skin went completely white. "And people live through these?" "Millions of people," Mike confirmed. "We build our cities to withstand the storms, and when they're not strong enough, we rebuild them stronger. We've learned to predict the weather and take shelter, but sometimes the storms still catch us." Lisa looked up from her patient, blood on her gloves, but a calm expression on her face. "We also have earthquakes that can split the ground open. Volcanoes that pour molten rock across the landscape, and floods that can wash away everything for hundreds of kilometers." Ow. Veltar's voice cracked with hope. David laughed from across the room where he was repairing. "A damaged communication panel. I grew up in California. Earthquakes were just Tuesday. We had earthquake drills at school like fire drills. Fire drills." His translator seemed to struggle with the concept. "In case of building fires," Jessica explained, "uncontrolled combustion that can spread through structures and kill everyone inside. It happens often enough that we train children how to escape." The ambassador's legs finally gave out, and he sank into a chair designed for much larger beings. "Your star. We detected high radiation levels in your system readings." "Solar radiation." Mike nodded. "Constant bombardment of particles and energy from our sun. Extended exposure causes cellular damage and cancer. That's why humans have melanin in their skin, natural radiation shielding, and you consider this normal?" Veltar's voice was barely audible. "Normal enough," Mike said with a slight smile. "We adapt. Dr. Walker here is a trauma surgeon. She's trained to work on people who've been torn apart by machinery, crushed in vehicle accidents, shot, stabbed, burned, and broken in ways your people probably can't imagine." Lisa nodded as she finished sealing the crystal alien's fracture. "Emergency medicine on Earth means working fast under extreme pressure. You learn to stay calm when someone's life depends on your next decision." Veltar's skin began cycling through colors again, faster now. "The atmosphere analysis? We ran. The gas mixture you breathe would be toxic to most known species. Oxygen is highly corrosive." 21% oxygen, David confirmed cheerfully. "Plus nitrogen, carbon dioxide, and trace gases." The oxygen concentration would probably kill most of your species pretty quickly. "And the compounds you consume for pleasure," Veltar continued, his voice rising with what might have been hysteria. "Caffeine, alcohol, capsaicin. Our databases classify these as industrial toxins and poisons." David looked up with a grin. "The coffee's poison. That explains why I feel so terrible before my first cup." You joke about consuming poison, Veltar whispered. Well, alcohol technically is poison, Jessica admitted. But in small doses, most humans can process it safely. Some of us even enjoy the effects. Capsaicin is what makes food spicy, Lisa added. It's a neurotoxin that causes a burning sensation. Humans developed a taste for it because the pain triggers. Endorphin release natural painkillers that create a pleasant feeling. You eat neurotoxins for fun, Veltar stated flatly. When you put it like that, it does sound weird, Mike admitted. The ambassador's skin flashed through the entire visible spectrum before settling on deep purple. Your domesticated animals. After dinner, I researched them. Dogs are descended from wolves, pack hunters that kill prey much larger than themselves. Cats are descended from solitary predators that have reflexes fast enough to catch flying creatures. Dogs are great with kids, Jessica said. Very protective. Protective, Veltar repeated. You keep predators in your homes to protect your young from other predators? Well, when you say it like that, ... And horses, Veltar continued, pulling up data on his device with shaking hands, powerful enough to crush a human with their hooves, yet you climb on their backs and ride them at high speeds for recreation. Horse riding is fun, Lisa said, though it can be dangerous. Lots of broken bones in my emergency room from riding. Accidents. Veltar's device clattered to the floor as his 6 hands lost their grip. You're Deathworlders, he breathed. Actual Deathworlders. We thought they were legends, stories told to frighten children. Species from Hellworlds who could only survive through violence. Mike knelt beside the terrified ambassador, his voice gentle despite the revelation hanging between them. We're also philosophers, Ambassador. Artists, teachers, healers, scientists, and explorers. We didn't choose the world we evolved on, but we did choose what to do with the strength it gave us. Veltar's skin had gone completely transparent, showing the complex internal structures beneath. How do you become gentle when your world taught you only violence? Lisa finished cleaning her hands and sat down across from the ambassador. Because we learned that strength without compassion is just destruction. Every human child learns about kindness, about helping others, about working together to build something better than what we had before. We could have used our abilities to conquer and destroy, David added. Some humans tried that path throughout our history, but we learned it only leads to more suffering, Mike nodded. We became strong enough to choose peace, Ambassador. Strong enough to protect those who can't protect themselves. That's what brought us to the stars, not to find new worlds to conquer, but to find new friends to protect. The medical bay fell silent except for the quiet humming of alien medical equipment and the soft sounds of the crystal beings breathing as Lisa's treatment took effect. Finally, Veltar looked up at the 4 humans who had just redefined his understanding of what was possible in the universe. What happens now? He whispered. The emergency council chamber aboard the Harmony's Edge had been transformed into something resembling a galactic courtroom. Holographic projectors filled the space with shimmering images of alien delegates from across the Confederation. 17 different species were represented, their forms ranging from crystalline beings that sang in harmonic frequencies to gas-based creatures that existed as clouds of intelligent particles. The debate had been raging for 3 hours. The translation. Systems were working overtime to convert arguments made in everything from subsonic vibrations to patterns of bioluminescent light. The air itself seemed to crackle with tension as voices rose and fell in languages that spanned the entire electromagnetic spectrum. High Counselor Plexinum dominated the center of the room, his massive bulk supported by anti-gravity generators. His species resembled walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves that rustled with his emotions. Right now, those leaves were turning a deep red that everyone recognized as extreme agitation. This is madness, Plexinum declared, his voice like wind through a forest. Deathworlders have never successfully integrated into civilized society. Every historical record shows them becoming conquerors, destroyers, tyrants. We cannot allow these humans into our peaceful alliance. Murmurs of agreement rippled through several delegates. The Krillian representative, a being that looked like living liquid metal, added her voice to the opposition. The theoretical models are clear. Species that evolve on hostile worlds develop aggressive tendencies that cannot be suppressed. It is biological destiny. But Ambassador Veltar stood firm, his skin now showing patterns of deep conviction. With respect, counselors, you weren't there. You didn't see what I saw. These humans saved our ship. They neutralized 12 armed raiders without killing a single one? What does that tell you about their true nature? Captain Nexmore, whose own species resembled giant butterflies with iridescent wings, activated the ship's holographic display system. I have the security recordings. Watch their movements during the attack. The chamber filled with three-dimensional images of the battle. The delegates watched in stunned silence as the humans moved through the ship's corridors with impossible grace. David's lightning-fast disarmament of 3 raiders. Jessica and Lisa working in perfect coordination. Mike subduing an armored warrior twice his size without causing permanent harm. Look at the precision, Dexmore continued, his wings shimmering with excitement. Perfect coordination, minimal force, maximum efficiency. They fight like they've been training for warfare their entire lives. But notice the restraint. Every strike is calculated not to kill, only to disable. A new voice joined the debate, Counselor Euthera, whose species existed as a collective consciousness housed in a network of crystal matrices. The recordings are impressive, but they prove our point. These beings are living weapons. We know they won't turn that efficiency against us? The chamber erupted again in multilingual arguments. Some delegates pointed to humanity's violent history, discovered through their cultural broadcasts and historical records. Others noted the humans' artistic achievements. It's their literature that spoke of peace and cooperation. Their scientific advances that benefited all life. Mike Thompson stood quietly in the center of the chaos, his 3 teammates beside him. They had been silent observers for most of the debate, understanding that their fate was being decided by beings they had barely met. But now, as the arguments reached a crescendo, Mike stepped forward. "Honored delegates," he said, his voice cutting through the noise with surprising authority. "May I speak?" The chamber fell silent. All eyes and optical sensors and electromagnetic detection organs focused on the human captain. "We understand your concerns," Mike continued, his tone respectful but firm. "Humanity did evolve in a harsh environment. We are the products of a world that taught us to fight, to struggle, to survive against impossible odds. But we are also the products of consciousness, of empathy, of choice." He gestured to his teammates. "We didn't come to the stars seeking conquest or domination. We came seeking knowledge, friendship, and the chance to be part of something greater than ourselves. We don't want to rule anyone. We want to learn from you, to grow alongside you, and to contribute whatever we can to this remarkable civilization you've built." Counselor Yatharis' crystals pulsed with skeptical light. "But what can Deathworlders possibly contribute to a peaceful society? Your very nature seems antithetical to our values." Dr. Lisa Walker stepped forward, her voice steady and professional. "We can protect it, Counselor. The attack on this ship proved something that many of you may not want to acknowledge. Not everyone in the galaxy shares your peaceful nature. Pirates exist. Raiders exist. Hostile species that view your civilization as prey rather than peers, they exist too." She paused, looking around the chamber at the assembled delegates. "When those threats come calling, when violence threatens, everything you've built over 3,000 years, who will stand against them? Your security forces collapsed under 1.3 gravity? Your weapons are designed to stun wildlife, not stop determined attackers." Jessica Martinez nodded, adding her own perspective. "We've learned something in our evolution that maybe your species haven't had to learn. We've discovered how to be guardians, not just warriors. The same instincts that make us dangerous in combat also make us protective of those who can't protect themselves." David Park pulled up his own holographic display, showing images from human history. "Look at our development as a species. Yes, we had wars, conflicts, terrible violence, but look what we built from that foundation. Hospitals, schools, art, museums, space programs, dedicated to exploration rather than conquest. We learned to channel our aggressive instincts into protective ones. The chamber buzzed with quiet conversations as delegates consulted with their advisors and analyzed the humans' words. The translation systems worked frantically to convey not just the words but the emotional undertones. The sincerity that seemed to radiate from these four beings. Finally, a new voice spoke, ancient and resonant, carrying the weight of millennia. Ancient Zephyr Colthene was the eldest being in the Confederation, a creature so old that his species had evolved beyond physical form into pure energy patterns that danced like aurora and specially designed containment fields. Young humans, Colthene said, his voice like wind through crystal chambers. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, we have built wonders beyond imagination through cooperation and harmony. We have created art that spans star systems, science that unlocks the secrets of creation itself, philosophy that has elevated consciousness to levels our ancestors never dreamed possible. The ancient being paused, his energy patterns shifting to deeper hues. But we have also become vulnerable. We have grown so accustomed to peace that we have forgotten the necessity of strength. Perhaps it is time for guardians. The debate continued for another hour, but the tone had shifted. Delegates who had been firmly opposed began asking questions about integration protocols and safeguard measures. Species that had remained neutral started voicing tentative support. When the vote was finally called, the results surprised everyone. 847 in favor, 823 opposed, with 329 abstentions. It was the closest vote in Confederation history. But it was enough. Humanity became the first species ever granted protectorate status, full members of the Confederation with a unique role. They would serve as diplomats and scientists, artists, and teachers, explorers, and researchers. But when darkness threatened the peaceful worlds of the galaxy, when violence came calling at the doors of civilization, humanity would stand ready to defend what they had come to love, as the freedom prepared to depart for Earth with news of acceptance. Ambassador Veltar stood at the observation deck, watching the small human vessel. His skin had settled into a deep blue, the color his species associated with hope tempered by wisdom. Captain Nexmore joined him at the viewport, his wings folded in contemplation. "What have we done, Veltar? Have we just invited wolves into the sheep pen?" Veltar's skin shifted to include threads of silver, the color of determination mixed with understanding. "No, my friend. I think we've finally given peace a sword. To defend itself, so the galaxy would never be the same again."